When you upgrade the operating system, you move from one version of the operating system to another. Often the first step in upgrading is to identify the operating system version you want to use. In this course, we've covered the following operating system versions: Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows Vista, and some information on Windows 7. Windows 2000 is still used in some cases in certain businesses. However, development for Windows 2000, other than some bug fixes, has stopped. In fact, Microsoft will soon discontinue support for Windows 2000. Depending on when you watch this video, support may have already terminated for Windows 2000. Windows XP is currently being used in many businesses. It has still been superseded by Vista and Windows 7, but has a wide installed base and is currently being shipped even on new computers such as netbooks and other computers that are going to specific businesses. Windows Vista replaced Windows XP, with Windows 7 being the latest update. It is similar in features to Windows Vista, however includes several bug fixes and new enhancements. When we talk about upgrading, you won't be upgrading to Windows 2000. You will likely choose one of these other operating systems to upgrade to. One of the biggest considerations to choose which operating system you'll use is what operating system version is currently being used in your business. If you're at home, you might choose the operating system based on the versions. In a business, you might be more likely to say, all of our systems are currently running at Windows XP, therefore we will only install to Windows XP and not any of these newer operating systems at this time. Windows XP has a large installed base, and one of the biggest reasons to choose Windows XP is compatibility. Meaning compatibility with hardware as well as with software. XP is more compatible with older hardware and software that might still be in use at home or in a business. So if you have hardware that you would like to use, you might find that Windows Vista and Windows 7 is unable to use that hardware. And the biggest reason for that might be the existence of drivers for that specific operating system. When you upgrade to Windows Vista, for instance, you may need to get new drivers for your hardware. If the hardware is old enough, the vendor may not have updated the drivers to work with the newer operating systems, and you might find your hardware no longer works properly. So many businesses are still installing Windows XP for hardware and software compatibility. When choosing between Windows and Vista, you would typically choose one of these operating systems if you wanted some of the newer features that has come out since Windows XP. You might actually choose these operating systems for newer hardware support. For instance, you may have a new piece of hardware that has only drivers for Vista and Windows 7 and not Windows XP, although that condition is rather rare at the moment. You might also choose these operating systems for such features such as Arrow, or the search and indexing capabilities. You might choose it for the sidebar and the gadgets. There are improvements with Media Center. And in a business environment, you might choose Vista or Windows for BitLocker, which offers encryption of the data on your hard drives. All of these features are not available with Windows XP, so you might choose these operating systems to take advantage of these newer features. When choosing between Vista and Windows 7, again, one choice is, what am I currently using in my business environment? But in most cases, you'll find that Windows 7 will be a better choice than Windows Vista. Windows 7, again, is an update and an upgrade from Vista, and is at least as compatible as Vista with hardware and software. In addition to choosing the operating system version, you'll need to choose the edition. Each edition has a subset of features for an intended market. Rather than list every edition, let's just talk about some generic considerations when choosing the Windows edition. Typically there's a Home Edition or a Home Premium. And as the name implies, these editions are to be used typically by single users or users with a very small network in a home. The Home is the most basic version, with Home Premium including additional features such as, in the case of Windows Vista, Arrow and the Media Center, as well as additional options within the backup program. The Home Edition is the most limited version and might be best suited for computers with very limited hardware capabilities. In most cases, you'll probably choose a Home Premium version. Another version, depending on the operating system type, is a Professional version. sometimes called a business version. And one of the biggest advantages to choosing a professional version is the ability to connect to a domain. So if you have a domain controller and you're connecting as a member of a domain, you'll need to choose a professional version. You'll find that many of the features in the Home Premium version are also included in the professional version, although there's also an Ultimate version, which is best thought of as everything including the kitchen sink. It's a combination of the Home Premium as well as the professional versions, as well as in some cases additional features. With Windows 7, for instance, the Ultimate version really only offers additional language support. So for instance, if you want users to be able to switch between different languages within the operating system. A final addition you might see is Enterprise, and the Enterprise is really a similar version to the Ultimate Edition that is geared for businesses. And it's really just like the Ultimate version, other than it has different licensing conditions. For example, if you were to buy the operating system for yourself, you might be able to choose the Home Premium, Professional, or Ultimate editions, but you would typically only purchase the Enterprise edition if you were a large business. Another consideration when choosing the operating system is the platform that the operating system is intended for, either 32-bit or 64-bit processors. When you purchase the operating system, you'll specify whether you want the 32-bit version or the 64-bit version. They are not the same thing. The version you choose depends on your hardware. The 32-bit version can run on either 32-bit or 64-bit processors. So for instance, if I had a 64-bit processor, I could install the 32-bit version of Windows. However, when running the 32-bit version of Windows, I'm limited to the capabilities of that 32-bit operating system. One of the biggest limitations of the 32-bit operating system is that it can only access up to 4 gigabytes worth of memory. When I'm using a 32-bit operating system, I also have to have 32-bit drivers. And I can only run 32-bit applications. So for instance, I may have a computer with a 64-bit processor. However, I might be using older hardware that only has 32-bit drivers. In that case, I would choose the 32-bit operating system and use the 32-bit drivers to run that hardware. The 64-bit version of the operating system can only be installed on a 64-bit processor. The 64-bit operating system and processor do not have the 4 gigabyte memory limitation. So if you want to use more than 4 gigabytes worth of memory, you should choose the 64-bit operating system to run on your 64-bit processor. One problem with the 64-bit operating system is that it requires 64-bit drivers. And this is where compatibility might be an issue. You might find that hardware that you currently have does not have the corresponding 64-bit drivers. So you might find that you will be unable to use some of your older hardware devices in your 64-bit configuration. A 64-bit operating system can run both 32-bit or 64-bit applications. Applications written for 64 bits may have some advantages over applications written for 32 bits. Although most 32-bit applications should run on a 64-bit system. You may find, however, some bugs and other problems that could exist with your older 32-bit applications. Typically, you can just download updates to these applications to fix any problems that are experienced on your 64-bit systems. A final consideration when upgrading is to make sure that your hardware supports the new operating system. The best way to ensure compatibility is to run the Upgrade Advisor for the target operating system version. The Upgrade Advisor analyzes your current hardware, drivers, and applications to ensure that everything is compatible. The resulting report ensures that your computer meets the required minimum hardware for the operating system and notifies you of potential problems with drivers or applications.